You're listening to the 95 Podcast from the team at 95 Network, where we host conversations specifically designed to support leaders in small and mid-sized churches. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 95 Podcast. My name is Caralee Culpepper, and I am here with our Executive Director, Dale Sellers. Dale, it's the end of the summer. And we've both had a little bit of time off, and it's been quite interesting, huh?
It has been. Hey, how you doing? I hadn't seen you in a few months.
I know.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for so much for the way you and John stepped up and covered. I took the month of July off, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I took the month of July off, and you and John covered and had some very interesting guests on your podcast. That was pretty cool. And then we played a couple of bonus episodes. And so this podcast will be our first podcast of the fall. And we just kind of want to talk through some of the things that's been happening, some of the changes we're experiencing. But before we do that, let's take a quick break and then we'll come right back to the podcast. Okay, so we've both had some time to spend reflecting and things like that. So I wanted to kind of just talk about what the summer's been like for me. I have I took the month of July off, and I don't want to be negative about in any certain words I use, but it wasn't a sabbatical. And if anybody remembers what
you're
happened,
a little afraid of those, right?
Yeah, if you just go back and listen to episode 91 about my sabbatical last year, if you want to understand why I said that. But no, it wasn't really a sabbatical. I just took July off from the day-to-day operations. Just took some time to reflect, and actually, I'm writing a new book. And I'm deep in the weeds of that. And I was excited. I've got the opening of the book written, first couple of chapters. I know all the chapters that I'm doing. And then I just got to fill them in, if you will. But if I title it today, I think today it would be called Take Heart. And then it's just about having encouraging pastors and leaders of all, everybody to not give up, not get discouraged. Because, I hate to keep saying this because it sounds like we keep saying this and it keeps sounding like it's being just redundant, but it's still true that the last couple of years have just taken such a toll on everybody.
Yeah. For sure.
And, I want to encourage leaders to understand, man, you're alive today for such a time as this. You are alive right now. You are as when you hear this podcast, the Lord has you in the place He has you right now so that you can lead. But if you wear yourself out, or if you just keep on going, the Bible says in Proverbs, it says that the prudent person sees danger and takes cover, but the foolish keeps on going. And so I think though most pastors wouldn't understand how that verse, or most leaders wouldn't understand how that verse relates to them, what happens to us oftentimes is we get in this groove of life, and all of a sudden life starts running us instead of us being in control of how we live our lives. And there's some natural things in place, like in your season, you've got small kids. You can't just decide, hey, I'm just going to set them aside for a while. You got to let them go away. You're married.
That wouldn't work very well.
No, you can't tell David, hey, David, look, I'm taking a 3-month break. You can't do that. But I'm talking specifically vocationally. And I think a lot of folks in ministry, they miss this, yes, we have a divine calling and pastoring and ministry and anything like that. Yes, you've been called to do it, but God doesn't put expectations on pastors to kill themselves, to wear themselves out just because they're quote unquote in ministry versus people who are not in ministry, who have quote unquote normal jobs. We're all responsible for stewarding our time and stewarding our lives. And there are times that the appropriate thing to do is to step back and take a break. Now, I know a lot of folks listening, and the reason I didn't want to say the sabbatical necessarily, because there's a lot of folks listening who may not work at a church, and you don't usually hear of sabbaticals outside of church settings, who can't take, a month off or 6 weeks off, but you can take 2 weeks off. And really, my big concern for most leaders isn't that they just take the 2 weeks off, or that if a pastor goes on a sabbatical. What I'm more concerned about for most of us, and this would include housewives and leaders in any arena, is that you Sabbath. We do not understand the danger of what this does to us in our culture when we just go wide open all of the time. You know, I think about, and where you and I live here in Greer, South Carolina, I think about how many construction workers that I see who when you ride by, when I grew up, you would never see this, but you see construction work, you know, guys building houses or putting on roofs, doing that on Sunday. And I'm not talking about specifically just the day Sunday, but just the fact that a lot of these guys work 7 days a week. You know, we know of a guy, my kids, Tiffany and TJ, just bought a new home, and they had a fella who redid their hardwood floors, and he works 7 days a week. Now he drives up in a brand new Mercedes to the job site, you know, but he's never off. And so he's, you know, he's not making a living, he's not making a life, he's just making money.
Right.
And that's not what it's about. And so, you know, for me, I know last year the Lord specifically told me to go on a sabbatical, and you'll have to go back and listen to that episode to find out the lessons that I've learned. And I'm still learning from that experience, if you will. But this year it was just take July, because July's a slow time in what we do anyway. Take July and just slow it down a little bit, play a little golf, write the book. And when you do that, it kind of helps you to clear your head. And so that's more of what I've done this summer. Is just really trying to concentrate. And so, and for me, because I don't know how you are, because you do writing too, maybe you're not wired this way, but for me, if I'm writing something, I got to get rid of everything else.
Right.
You know, I can't write a chapter in the middle of the day in the midst of everything else. I have to sit down at my desk and get my coffee and block out distractions, you know. And I guess, you know, I know probably the great authors are like, Dale, you're nuts, you know, because I've heard like guys who say they get up, you know, like it's 5 a.m. and write for an hour and then go do their day. Well, I don't write like that. I have to block time. Once I get in this groove, because here's what happens to me. If I don't do that, then I find that I wake up at 3 a.m. with ideas, and I have my phone beside my bed, and I'm running, and I'm like, oh Lord, help me, you know. And so it's easier to get it all out, if you will. Now, you write. How do you do things?
Oh, I mean, I don't really write in that type of manner, really.
Yeah, you don't write original stuff as much as you do like editing and stuff, right?
Editing, and then, you know, writing content for websites. So that's a little bit different. It's a little bit more factual. Definitely not like my ideas that I'm putting down on paper. So a little bit different, but I do understand what you're saying, though. I do have to have a distraction-free environment. It's very hard to write anything really with a lot of noise, you know, background noise going on. So
you're saying that, I'm thinking, okay, you got you got Nora and Foster, and what are they? Are they 7 and 4 now? And
7 and 4, yeah.
And you need a distraction-free environment. Okay, how you do that?
Well, you know, that's what school's for.
Yeah, and then we have, you know, we have our 2 grandkids, and with Sienna, she's 5 now, but for the first 2 or 3 years of her life, she came and stayed with us every Monday. So every Monday we had her, and when she's here, that's where our world is. It revolves around her. And now she's going to school and actually starts kindergarten this fall. But her little brother, Josiah, is here, and we watch him every Tuesday now. And so, and when he's here, he wants me to sit in my recliner and sit in my lap all day long. So that is definitely
so fun, though.
Distraction. Oh, I wouldn't trade anything in the world for it, but I already know that.
Exactly.
You know, and he knows sometimes, and he does take a nap, but you know, Tuesdays are not a big work day for me because he's here. And you know, I wouldn't change that. I love my family. I love my grandkids, and so spending time with them. But I also know that to really contribute and do the things that God's called me to do, I've got to build in my calendar and build in my schedule reflection time. And I've talked to you about this before, but you know, last year, our 100th episode is right before you came on. I had Carrie Newhoff on, and he'd just written a book called At Your Best. And one of the things Carrie talked about in that book was that you have to block off the time in your calendar. And so he made this statement, and I did not understand this as being something that we should do. But Carrie said, you know, if you look at your calendar and 6 months from now, you look at your calendar and your calendar's completely clear, that's not good. Well, I'm like, well, sure it is. You don't have a bunch of stuff going on. And he was like, no, because he said, if you don't block in things in your calendar, if you don't put things in your calendar will just fill up on its own. And so I was like, that was like real revelation for me. And so what I've done is I've basically gone through, and from now till Jesus comes back, I blocked my mornings for creativity, for writing, for things like that, for podcasting and stuff like that. And so I control what goes in there. And what I mean by that is anybody can go to my Calendly link and book an appointment, but they'll never be able to do that in the mornings. I have to approve that. I've put my Gene and I we have a weekly date. I've put that in our calendar. It's there. I got all the birthdays marked and all that kind of stuff. And so it's really changed how I approach life. And the reason I wanted to share that is because now I'm not stressed out anymore about my schedule.
Right.
And if you know me, I've always been stressed out. I've lived a life perpetually stressed out, and so I've been able to calm life down and control my calendar, to block my day off. I've made myself go put things like playing golf in there, or won't be long before hunting season rolls back around. I put those things on my calendar because if I don't do them, there's always something else that can be done.
Oh, and I don't know if you're like me, but I am a type of personality who really thrives on structure. So like if I have things that are kind of laid out, or if I have my day laid out, in a rhythm, maybe not like I get so upset if something doesn't happen the way it should, but that makes me just feel better and think a little bit more clearly.
Let me ask you this question then. How does a woman who's got those 2 kids, how can you lay your life out like that? How do you do that?
I'm not saying I do it perfectly. Like, let's just start there, because I definitely don't. But, I think this summer, it's been very interesting because everybody's been home. We for the first time,
what does that mean? Everybody's been home because your kids are small. Okay.
School is out. So both of the kids
in a normal week, they're in school.
Foster goes to preschool a few mornings a week, and then Nora obviously is elementary school. So, she goes normal elementary time. But so yeah, nobody's in school for this whole summer, and but we found like a little bit of a groove, which has been really nice. And like we did swim team at the beginning of the summer, so that was like our mornings, and then that got us to lunchtime, and then we had time after lunch, and just having that kind of like a rhythm helps me a lot, just to kind of know what I need to do during the day and know when I have time to do it and things like that. And I don't know, I feel a lot better when things are like that, rather than just kind of flying by the seat of my pants. And then ending up running around in circles because I don't know what to do first, type of thing.
It's just because it's how you're wired. You're wired for needing structure. Yeah, absolutely,
100%. And I just do better with a structure like that. So, I feel like you're saying, like with the calendar and planning your time out, like that's a good thing for me, for sure.
Have you always been this way?
Oh yeah.
And that's not negative about this way. If you always, is that your personality is what I'm
saying? Oh yeah, absolutely. Like even as a kid, I, had to-do lists, and I loved, planning things and organizing things, stuff like that. This is like nothing new for sure.
But when you do that as a kid, did you do that because they asked you to do that, your parents, or did you just do it because you're wired that way?
I just did it. I don't know. I've always my mom's always said I have the gift of organization. I just like for things to be structured and organized, and I don't know. I've just always been like that. I have no idea why.
Well, I just asked because I've told you this sometimes. I think I'll probably even say it on the podcast, but you're basically me in a girl's body as far as how we're wired. And because when I grew up, I used to clean my room.
Me too.
I dusted my room when I was like 9 years old. I had a sign on my door. Let's just say that my sisters were not as clean as I am. We'll just not go any further than that. But let's just say that some different personality types. But I had a sign on my door that says "Do not enter," because I kept my room spotless. I made my bed. The one thing that my mom did not teach me growing up was how to do laundry, and I wish she had, because I would have done my laundry. But I have always been a clean freak. Here, even now, Gene and I, as of the time we recorded this, will have just celebrated 40 years of marriage. We've been married for 40 years, and I am, I like to do the laundry, and doing the laundry is not just washing it. You got to dry it, fold it, and put it up or hang it up. So I enjoy doing that. When we got back from our trip, we just recently went to a trip to Montana to see our daughter. I got home that night, and I told you we flew the red eye, so actually it was during the day. But as soon as I got a little bit of sleep, I did 5 loads of laundry. I did the dishes. I like doing this. I'm the guy who gets to vacuum the apartment we're living in right now. I love that kind of stuff. But I'm also wired to work. And what I did not understand about myself is is that I'm very performance oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And, and again, I grew up in the Christian tradition where we believe you're saved by grace through faith. It's free gift, free gift, free gift, free gift,
Mm-hmm.
which hopefully everybody who's listening believes that. But then I would spend the rest of my time trying to not convince you, but show you is the word, how saved I was, if I can say it like that, by what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it just created, I became a mess,
Mm-hmm.
because I got to this performance mode with my walk with God.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I felt like he was keeping score. Have you ever
Mm-hmm.
felt like in life where, somebody's keeping score, whether it's God or just because of the way you're wired?
I don't feel like I've ever thought that about God, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely performance oriented too. And like, I think I probably put more pressure on myself than anybody else does.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't do things perfectly, then I get really upset. So,
But have you ever
yeah.
thought about why you get upset? I mean, so for you to get upset because you didn't do something perfect, somebody's got to be keeping score, right? I mean, somebody's got to be,
Mm-hmm.
you're performing for someone is what I'm trying to get at. Have you ever thought about who that might be? Since it's not God.
Myself, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I just expect perfection from myself,
I know.
So, and I mean, David and I talk about this all the time. Like, it's okay to not do everything, perfectly. It's okay to make a mistake every once in a while. So,
that's the question I want you to answer throughout your next 20 years.
yeah,
Because for
I know.
me,
I do think
because
that'll be
if
a
someone,
lifelong learning lesson for
if
me.
someone had asked me that question when I was your age, I would have answered it just like you did.
Mm-hmm.
I would have said, I don't know. And I would have said, I'm putting this pressure on myself because of myself. But then I began to realize as I got older, and you may not ever get to this point, but I realized that there were some real dysfunctions that happened to me when I was a kid that I did not know till I went through my experience last year with what happened on the sabbatical. And I'm not going to say what it was. That'd be a teaser for anybody who hadn't listened to go back and listen to that. But what I did discover out of that was, I had to go to counseling, and in the counseling, one of the things that my counselor, Bob Hamp, helped me to understand was, he said, Dale, your problem is you don't take care of yourself, that you put everybody else above yourself. And I said, well, isn't that what we're called to do? He says, not necessarily. He said, because if you're not healthy, he said, you fly all the time. What do they tell you to do? They always tell you, put your mask on first. Well, I've always thought, well, they just do that because you need to do it. But what I did not know is if that thing in the plane drops your mask down, I just read this article recently. You only have a few seconds before you pass out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't get your mask on, you can't help your kids beside you or anybody else that might be suffering. If you're not healthy, you can't help people. Mm-hmm. And what I realized was, this is so bizarre, and this is part of the journey I've been on since last year, is I recognize that, and this happened one time in my life, Caralee. Once I saw my mom and dad get in a fight one morning before I went to school when I was in the first grade. I'm assuming it was about money, because we always have issues about money. But I saw my mom and dad. And when I tell you the story, I see this in my mind. My mom runs across the hall from one bedroom into the other bedroom with her hands over her face, crying. And I'd never seen that before. And so I went to school that day. I was so upset that day. And finally, I start crying in one of the classes. And so finally, my first grade teachers pulls me inside and said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Oh, my mom and dad are getting a divorce." And so the teacher had to call my mom in the afternoon and tell her. And she said, "We're not getting a divorce." She was really embarrassed by the whole thing. But something kicked off in me. And Caralee, I'm 60 now. We celebrated that together. It took me to this year to figure out that what happened to me as a 6-year-old was, I took it upon myself. I assumed upon myself the responsibility of taking care of everybody else. Mm-hmm. I started feeling like as a 6-year-old, I had to hold everybody together. I had to hold the family together. I had to hold my parents' marriage together. And one of the things that I did recognize about my dad was with us growing up. He was there physically, but my dad was not always there emotionally. And what I mean was, he didn't bring that emotional covering or that stability that we need. And so I took it upon myself that I had to be that stability. And man, and so now I'm responsible for my parents' marriage. Now I'm responsible for my two sisters. And boy, that didn't go away as I got older. It just got worse. So when you talk about being a mess, when I pastored the church that I pastored, oh my goodness, I was responsible for everybody's marriage, and I did massive amounts of marriage counseling. And then I began to discover something in a lot of the marriage counseling I was doing. I began to discover that people just wanted to come sit down with me and gripe at each other. And I'm like, wait, we're not making any progress here. And so I had to institute some things that in my counseling that I will not see you. Let's just say, for example, you and David come to me, you're having a struggle about something, and you come to me, and I will tell you up front, I will not see you about the same issue, but 3 times. Because after 3 times, either 1, your issue is over my head, or 2, you just want to come gripe with me, or 3, I don't have the ability. You're not willing to do the follow through stuff. Does that make sense? And so I had to do that because I did that which also helped the couples, by the way, because again, the reason I did that was I thought I had to listen to everybody's problems and solve everybody's problems. And so if somebody's kid got messed up in high school, or it was my fault, if a marriage didn't make it in our church, it was my fault. I was thinking, I'm not this way now. I was just thinking a mess back then. And it's because I assumed upon myself the responsibility of holding everybody's world together. And it just almost, it almost killed me. If I had not applied for a life insurance or to renew my term insurance policy when I was 52, we would not have discovered that I had a widowmaker and that my heart was blocked in 4. I was blocked in 90% in 3 arteries and 100% in the other, and did not know it. And it all happened because of stress. And that stress came because I kept feeling like I had to be everything to everyone.
Right.
And it's just so odd that today we're recording. I'm going to read something to you. I got a text today from our friend Marty Sawyers. Remember Marty from the Full Strength Network?
I do.
I did not ask Marty if I could share this, but I don't think he'll care at all. And Marty, if you do care, I'm sorry, I'm sharing it anyway. So this morning I get this text, and he thinks that I've been on vacation, but I haven't. I just been taking a break. But here's what he said. He said, I hope you're having a great vacation. For some reason, I read the 4th day of your stalled reading plan today. If you don't know what I'm talking about, YouVersion did a 4-day little Bible study. We have it on our website, built around my book. So it's just something we got, a little stalled. It's called stalled devotional plan, 4-day plan. And so he read day 4 today. He says, I don't know why I read he said, I don't know why. It's because I read your plan before, why day 4 stuck out. But you reminded me that I can't do anything. And he put in quotes, do. I can't do anything for God. I do things through and from him. It was such a great reminder because I seem to be in a season of trying to do everything for him and not through him. Thank you for writing this and also for your friendship, and enjoy your time away. I got that today.
Oh, I love it. That's wonderful.
And that's the leader of a network of, Full Strength Network. Marty, these guys are they're making a huge difference. But if he starts assuming, because they're helping pastors everywhere,
right?
If poor Marty, if he assumes it upon himself that he's got to help all those pastors, it ain't gonna go well.
Right.
And Jesus never ever intended for us, whether you're in pastoring or whether you're a mom or whatever you are, he never intended for us to do this stuff in our own strength.
Right.
He wants to do it through us. He wants to work through us, and so. This has been a big adjustment for me, to get to that place to where, because, I've shared this, and I may have not told you this, but I used to live every day thinking that every person I ever met, I was responsible for their soul. So like when I walked down the hall, as a senior in high school at Wren High School, I would walk down the halls of school and feel guilty because I knew people in those halls that weren't saved that I knew. And I had not led them to Jesus. I'm 17 years old like that.
Right.
What a stinking mess. And so all of that, it comes back to what you said earlier. I had to kind of finally resolve, well, who am I doing this for? Why am I wired this way? What's going on inside of me? And so that's why I built in these times now where I take breaks and I do reflecting type things and stuff like that. And as I have gotten older, I've gotten wiser, gotten smarter, I ain't perfect, but you know what the difference is now? It doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
always knew I wasn't perfect, but for some reason I thought I was supposed to be.
Yep. Listen, I understand that completely.
But it's counter to the grace message. I mean, you kind of grew up the same way I did. I mean, you heard about you saved by grace through faith, and so,
That's right.
but you became a workaholic too.
Oh, I don't know about that, but well, maybe so, yeah.
So what was college like for you when you went to college? I mean, being wired how you are, how did that go for you?
Um, Gosh. Well, I think I took a different path, through college. I was farther from the Lord than I am now for sure. But I think one of the good things about being kind of type A like we are is that typically we're very responsible. So, I kept my grades up, did all that stuff, got my work done. But I think college really was a time. I think that the perfectionism from me has gotten worse as I've gotten older, actually.
Interesting. Did you
Yeah.
stress out of your grades?
Yeah, I
I mean,
did
I
for
met people
sure.
when I went to Furman for a couple of years, and there were students there because back then, I mean, we had people all 50 states, very high academic
Hmm.
standards, and I would watch kids. It was sad. I mean,
Hmm.
I would watch kids, get a B and feel like they want to commit suicide. I'm like, what is going
Yeah.
on here?
I feel like I really
How
struggled with
driven were you
that,
on that?
like more in like elementary school, getting a B instead of an A. I remember one specific science test in third grade, I got a B on. It was my first B ever, and I was like devastated.
On one test.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. But
Okay, so you can't.
I think by the time college rolled around, I guess more accepted, you know, like
okay, but is
I
that
didn't feel like I had to have perfect grades by any means.
the third grader that made the B? Were you worried you're gonna let your parents down? Can you remember? This may be too far back to remember, but do you remember why you felt that way?
Going back to it again, like,
Mhm.
yeah, I guess a little bit. But my parents, I think I knew that my parents wouldn't be. All they expected was for us to try our best.
Mhm.
Um, but it was more like me putting that kind of pressure on myself. Same thing.
Mhm.
Like it was just more for like me not meeting my own standards, really, truly. I was just
Wow.
upset. Yeah, because it wasn't an A. It wasn't perfect.
And you're performing for an audience of nobody. It's like, okay, nobody's holding you accountable, but it's just the way
Yeah.
you were. And
Hmm.
so in college, you kind of let your hair down a little bit. But then so you set aside this a little bit, but you said as soon as you got out, you picked it back up.
I think so. I think when I started my career, that was like just, I graduated in 2008 when the economy kind of busted. And so
Mhm.
it was really hard for me to find a job. Because I had a communications degree, which isn't really anything like you're trained in specifically. So
Sure.
finding a job was really difficult. Well, instead of just understanding like, oh, hey, the economy's terrible, there aren't really a whole lot of jobs out there, I blamed it on myself.
Yeah. The
And
whole
I think
world's
that
falling
really
apart
kind
because of
of,
me.
yeah, well, like I can't get a job because I'm not qualified.
Hmm.
Like I'm a failure because I can't, find a full-time job that I thought was, and honestly, this is not my fault, but like they kind of train you like, oh, you go to college. This was kind of the message that I heard growing up. Like you go to college, you're gonna walk out with some crazy good job and be a success automatically.
Hmm.
And that is just not really how that whole thing played out. So I think my expectations were um very different there. But I think that's kind of what started it. I feel like I just for a lot of years, like never really felt like I succeeded in my career,
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's probably
So you're
one way that
saying
I've
you were
struggled
stalled at
more.
one point.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So
What you just said about the whole college experience, that 1 minute is where the majority of our pastors are today.
mhm.
Because you get this, you're taught, okay, well, you go to you quit having fun, you get buckled down, you get your undergraduate degree, then you get your seminary degree, and no one says this, but the assumption is you're going to come out and you're going to get the great job, great church, you're going to go there, and it's just going to change thousands of lives. And
Mhm.
when you get there and all of a sudden it doesn't happen, and at some point for pastors, you start discovering, wait a minute, no one trained me for real life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here was the hardest part for me of becoming an adult and as a Christian, especially an adult who it was in ministry, even in my 20s. It still blows my mind, but it blew my mind that so many Christians, you have a hard time finding Jesus in them. It blew
Mm-hmm.
my mind that you go to a church and you see church people who they acted like the devil, they didn't act like Jesus. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a big hurdle for me to overcome, was seeing how people in the church, everybody don't always love the Lord in the church. That they
That's
all
right.
people have agendas and that kind of thing like that. And so it
Yes.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
busted my bubble. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you described you experienced when you came out of college is what a lot of our pastors experienced as well. And then we get off. So I don't know about how they are or how I think I know how you were, but then I just worked harder to
Mm-hmm.
try to turn that tide. And man, it would begin to wear me out.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, I want to transition. We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to transition to some updates that are happening in our lives. But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I've had the summer off, and as I had the summer off, you've had the summer off. And
Mm-hmm.
so a couple of weeks ago, you reached out to me and you said, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something." And when you did, I knew what you were going to talk to me about. I had no doubt about it. But you've had the summer to reflect. You've had this time we mentioned earlier with your kids and stuff. Kind of walk me
Mm-hmm.
through what's been happening in your own life with that.
Well, I will say last year was really busy for us, very, very busy. And, I think for me, I'm a freelancer. So, obviously I have like a couple of different projects that I'm working on a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just kind of said yes to too many things. And by the end of the school year, I was so burnt out that I thought, oh my gosh, I cannot, I can't, I really just wanted to give everything up and just like crawl in a hole for, a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, got to the summer, like you said, we took a little bit of a break from podcast recording and stuff like that. And one of the ladies in our small group encouraged us, the women of the small group, to read the book, here, Having a Mary Heart in a Martha World. Yeah.
Did that speak to you?
Oh goodness. Well, I'm still reading through it. I'm almost done. But yeah, I mean, the basic premise of the book is, the story of Mary and Martha in the Bible. Jesus and his disciples were at their house, and Mary was sitting next to Jesus listening to him, and Martha was in the kitchen working, and she comes in and she's complaining about Mary not helping her. And Jesus looks at her and he says, "Martha, Mary chose the better thing." And so the book is really just about, kind of choosing what's better, like your priorities in your life. Not to say that 95 Network is not a priority in my life, because I love 95 Network. I think we do wonderful things, but I really needed to take some time and kind of reflect on where I needed to be in my life. And so I need to be with my kids, this is my only shot that I get with them. And
Yep.
I think, a lot of times moms kind of set the tone for the household, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't have a whole lot of capacity or extra, which I think was very reflected in my attitude at home, and, how patient I was, how supportive I was, like how emotionally available that I was.
Or was it?
Or was not. Yes, very true. Very true. Unfortunately, I think David probably got the brunt of that,
That's
because,
exactly what I was
it's
thinking. Poor
easier to
David.
take it out on your spouse than your kids. So anyway, through a lot of prayer, a lot of talks with David, even talking to my parents a little bit, I decided that it would just be best for me to step away from the wonderful podcast world for right now. Very sad about it. This has been such a great opportunity. Oh my goodness, I have had a blast. I've met so many awesome people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, Dale, you've really been a great encourager for me, to, kind of get me out of my comfort zone and try new things. And I think that was really good for me. I mean, just to kind of prove to myself that I could do something new. Just really great. So I'm very sad to be leaving, but I'm also very excited, to be doing, I think, what God's called me to do.
Well, I don't want anybody to miss this. I'm extremely sad you're leaving, because you're really good at this.
Well,
You know,
thank
I
you.
reached out to you. It's been about a year now. You've recorded 45 podcasts.
Okay.
So we haven't even gone a full year yet, and you've done 45
Yeah.
podcasts, because there was one week we did like 4 or 5 in a week, because we were trying to stay ahead and stay caught up. And so, but you were telling a story. Remember when Jesus, when Martha comes and complains to Jesus, he has to call her name twice. Martha,
like
Martha.
To get her attention.
It's
Yeah.
like, okay, so here's Jesus in the house, and Martha can't even hear him the first time he calls.
Right.
And there are 2 segments in my book, Stalled, that I talk about the Mary Martha experience that you talked about there, because I learned a lot of things. And there's a lot of people who teach that passage that miss the fact that both Mary and Martha both were sitting and serving, because Martha says, do you not care that my sister has left me in the kitchen? So that means that Mary had been there at one point. And it says something about Martha, who also sat at Jesus' feet. But Martha reached a place in her life where she finally said, you know what? It'd be better if I go to the kitchen. And I believe I know why, because I think Martha felt like she was being judged, or she was on display that day. And so she thought that Jesus cared more about how the presentation of the plate was than sharing her soul with him. And so I'm extremely proud of you. I have, in fact, I made you tell me a day in the midst of getting to know you, probably about 6 months ago, that I blocked a day. And I said, I'm blocking this morning. It was Wednesday mornings. And I said, we're not recording any podcasts, because you have Wednesday to yourself, because I was concerned then, because you are, again, you're younger than I am, and you're a female, but the spirit is about the same person over there. You have the tendency to be driven like I was, and I know how it ended for me. Wow, that's so weird to say, because it could have been, I could have died from having the widowmaker, but we found it, and so I spent Christmas in ICU 6 years ago and getting my heart fixed. And so I don't want you to go down that road. And so I have told you from day one that your first priority is your marriage, as far as I'm concerned, and then your kids. And of course you walk with God, but I'm not going to ever come between that. And I've been doing ministry long enough now to know that sometimes God just loans you some people for a season.
Yeah, that's right.
So you have been such a breath of fresh air. Not that anything we're doing before wasn't good, but you've talked about this off mic. I don't know if I'm asking the right questions. I'm going, your perspective is awesome. And so you're a phenomenal podcast host. But I would much rather you be a great mama.
Well, thank you.
And be a great wife, because I don't want 95 Network to ever create stress. And so while I'm sad to see you go, I am very proud of you for making the right decision, because you see, if you had not made this decision and stayed with me, our relationship would have been strained. And see, I've been doing this long enough to know I would have known why, and I would have called you out about it. Okay. Because I've been living this, but a lot of guys in my position, here's why I want to go here. A lot of people in my position, when they have a Caralee on their team, will do everything they can to manipulate Caralee to stay on the team. I ain't doing that. Yeah. I don't need Nora and Foster to pay in the price because I'm selfish. I'm not going to do it. I don't need David paying the price because I'm selfish. And some of you listening right now, you've got people on your team, and either they need to launch out to something different, they need to go somewhere else. I cannot stand the competition that I see in ministry, where pastors will manipulate people to stay with them because when a staff member feels that they called somewhere else. And your kids if your kids paid the price for that, man, I want Nora to grow up and love Jesus.
I know.
I want
me too.
Foster. Maybe God will call him into ministry one day. His grandpa was a preacher or a pastor.
That's true.
And not that he has to be, but I don't want what your time with 95 Network to be the resentment point to where your kids all of a sudden don't want anything to do with church. And I've seen this happen over and over and over again. And here's the thing. I've always said this, and I do this in our one-day conference. I say this a lot. You need people on your team that when they leave, you can't replace them. And that's the way I feel about you.
Oh, thank you.
And here's what I mean by that. It's not just the talent to sit and talk on a microphone or ask questions. It's who you are. You're in my heart.
Oh,
and so you will always have a place there. And I want you to always have pleasant thoughts when you think about me or my 95 Network, because I gave you to the Lord. And he loaned you to us for a season. You've got a year under your belt. I will never forget the first time I reached out to you. I just had hired you to come do the copyright for me to edit my copy, my things that I right? My posts, my blogs. Yeah. And then all of a sudden one day I was praying and the Lord said, ask. So here's what I feel. The Lord said, ask Caralee to be your co-host. And the look on your face, because we had just met each other. We'd only probably had 3 or 4 Zoom calls, was like,
oh, I thought you were crazy. That's for sure.
I don't think I can do that. And I made the statement to you. I said, well, just pray about it, because you don't want the fear of the unknown to keep you from experiencing great blessing.
That's right.
And you came back to me 3 days later. And what'd you say?
I said, yes. And, I'm so glad that I did. Seriously, this has been such a great opportunity for me. I have loved it. Like I said, I think it was great to get me out of my box. I think it really built some confidence in me. Like, hey, I can do things that are probably not what I thought that I would be doing, things that are probably a little bit, because there was a little fear involved, I'm not going to say fear, nerves, I guess, doing something like this.
It is fear, because it's the fear of the unknown. And when someone asks you to co-host a podcast that mostly goes to pastors and ministers, you've got to be like, what is he? Is he nuts? Mm-hmm. But as you got into it and you found your groove and you got comfortable, see, what I'm excited about is, one, we've got a year's worth of great podcasts with you on them, but it showed you that God's got things for you, planned for you, that are exceeding abundantly above all you can ask or think.
That's true.
But so that verse is the most misquoted verse there is, because it also says, according to the power that works in you. Mm. So yes, people always say, well, God can do exceeding. Yeah, God can. But if he's going to do it in you, it's based on the power that works in you. That's and right. What I know is this: our podcast would have sucked. I guess I can say that to our audience. It would have been terrible if you had stayed in disobedience. You and I would not have gotten along. There would not have been that chemistry that makes a good podcast host. I just know how things work. If things aren't good with your kids and with your marriage, they can't be good with your ministry. Pastors, did you hear what I said? If things aren't good with your marriage, if things aren't good with your kids, then it limits the anointing, if you will, if I can say it like that. And the anointing is what the Lord uses to change people's lives. And what scares me right now more than anything in the world, in America, is we got lots of churches that the Holy Spirit, if he showed up, they'd like, who are you? And we got to get past this. So I'm so proud of you. I'm thankful for you.
Thank you.
You are I consider you to be a friend now. But I also consider you to be, and look, these kids are going to grow up one day. You'll get to the season Gina and I are in, where all of a sudden, you don't have kids at home. You can go and pursue things and do other things. And who knows what the Lord has for you.
Don't count me all the way out. I might just pop in as a guest host from here time to time. You never know.
Well, I did ask you, and you said it was okay. We're going to keep your voice on the front and at the end, just as the intro.
Yeah. Can't get rid of me all the way right now.
Well, I have I don't want to. Again, I'm trying to be the mature one here. I'm trying to be the good leader.
I really appreciate it. Doing this was met with a lot of support, and I certainly appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, you've been great. And like I said, I'm going to miss you. I'm going to, miss having you there with me, because you bring that different perspective. But I'm also going to be very thankful every time I think of you for doing the right thing. And the right thing is always to put your family first, always put your kids first, put your marriage first. And then, see, what I know is this didn't close a door. This opened a new one. You just don't know what it is right now.
That's true.
Isn't that good?
That is so true.
So thank you so much for.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's been great.
Never happened had you not made that call that day. So
I believe in you.
A wonderful thing in my life, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
I believe in you. I think I see. I love who you are today, but I see potential for who you're going to be in the future, and I think God's going to use you to do some things you don't imagine right now. But you just keep letting his power work in you, and you'll be surprised at what he does.
Will do. Thanks, Dale.
Yeah. And if people are wondering, hey, what are you going to do in the future? For now, I'm just going to keep hosting the podcast, because Austin helped me do the first 100, and you helped me do the next 50. But for this season, I'm just going to continue to do it. The podcast is certainly growing and connecting with new people, but you were part of that, and you took and you helped it go to the next level. So thank you so much. Thank you for being faithful. Thank you for always having a great attitude. That's one thing I love about you. Even if you were having a bad day, I didn't know it, and so I appreciate you doing that and bringing your A game every time you came. So God bless you. I'm going to pray over you. Thank you. Before we wrap up today, but just again, I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for being on our team. You made us better, and I cannot wait to see what God has for you next.
Thank you, Dale.
Jesus, thank you so much for Caralee and for allowing her to be in my life, and for our listeners to have her in their lives over this last season with the podcast. I thank you that she hears you and she doesn't follow the voice of a stranger. And in this season, you've impressed upon her the importance to put her family at even a higher level. And so I thank you that she's going to see even greater growth with her relationship with Nora and Foster, that her and David are going to see her marriage go to even a new level because she's prioritized by her actions, putting her family first. And I pray your blessing over her. Thank you for loaning her to us for this season, and for helping us for the way she's helped us be better. And so I just bless her. I bless her marriage. I bless her parenting. I bless her ministry within her local church. And I just speak a blessing over her. Lord, may you use her to glorify you in every way possible as she gets to do ministry from you and not for you in the future. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dale. This has been a fun, exciting, wild ride.
Well, it's been fun for me too. So thank you for doing it.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the 95 Podcast. We look forward to sharing another episode with you next week. In the meantime, visit our website at 95network.org. The website is loaded with great resources created for small and mid-sized church leaders. Until next time, have a great week.